Morning, boys and girls. We're going to be reading a new chapter from Black Beauty today. Chapter 16, The Fire. So if you have a book to follow along with, this is starting on page 76. Now, we left off with hearing that Black Beauty and Ginger were staying at a hotel. And strangely enough, the hotels at that time, they had stables for the horses to stay in because as people went through town, they needed their horses to still have a place to stay. So the ostler is the person who takes care of those horses at a stable. And for today's chapter, we're still at that hotel, still with that ostler. So I'm going to present my screen so you can follow along. Okay. So later on in the evening, a traveler's horse was brought in by the second ostler. And while he was cleaning him, a young man with a pipe in his mouth lounged into the stable to gossip. "I say, Towler," said the ostler, "just run up the ladder into the loft and put some hay down into this horse's rack, will you? Only lay down your pipe." That's probably important, right? Because a pipe would actually light the hay on fire if he brought it into the loft. "All right," said the other, and he went up through the trap door. And I heard him step across the floor overhead and put down the hay. James came in to look at us the last thing, and then the door was locked. I cannot say how long I had slept, nor what time in the night it was, but I woke up very uncomfortable, though I hardly knew why. I got up. The air seemed all thick and choking. I heard Ginger coughing, and one of the other horses seemed very restless. It was quite dark, and I could see nothing, but the stable seemed full of smoke, and I hardly knew how to breathe. The trap door had been left open, and I thought that was the place that it came through. What do you think caused this fire to start? That man with the pipe from earlier, do you think? Now, I listened and heard a soft rushing sort of noise and a low crackling and snapping. It's the sound of fire making the crackling and snapping sounds, and of the wood of the barn starting to crack. I did not know what it was, but there was something in the sound so strange that it made me tremble all over. Like his instinct with the bridge. He doesn't know why this is a bad thing, but he's very fearful. The other horses were all awake. Some were pulling at their halters, others stamping. At last, I heard steps outside, and the ostler who had put up the traveler's horse burst into the stable with a lantern and began to untie the horses and try to lead them out. But he seemed in such a hurry and so frightened himself that he frightened me still more. That makes sense. He's frightening the horse because he's scared. The first horse would not go with him. He tried the second and third, and they too would not stir. They're just staying still, like Black Beauty at that bridge. He came to me next and tried to drag me out of the stall by force. Of course, that was no use. He tried us all by turns and then left the stable. No doubt we were very foolish, but danger seemed to be all round, and there was nobody we knew to trust in, and all was strange and uncertain. You think you might do the same in a situation like this? Be scared because somebody else is scared? I think that's likely. A lot of times that fear is contagious. So if somebody else around us is scared, then we start to feel nervous and scared. Now, the fresh air that had come in through the open door made it easier to breathe. But the rushing sound overhead grew louder. And as I looked upward through the bars of my empty rack, I saw a red light flickering on the wall. Then I heard a cry of "Fire!" outside, and the old ostler quietly and quickly came in. He got one horse out and went to another, but the flames were playing round the trap door, and the roaring overhead was dreadful. The next thing I heard was James's voice, quiet and cheery as it always was. What do you notice that's different about James? He's being quiet and cheery. Do you think he's actually scared? Probably so. He's probably just acting calm in order to calm the horses, which makes a lot of sense. "Come, my beauties, it is time for us to be off, so wake up and come along," he says. I stood nearest the door, so he came to me first, patting me as he came in. Come, Beauty, on with your bridle, my boy. We'll soon be out of this smother. I was on in no time when he took the scarf off his neck and tied it lightly over my eyes, and patting and coaxing, he led me out of the stable. Little gentle pats and coaxing like this. Come on, Beauty. Now safe in the yard, he slipped the scarf off my eyes and shouted, Here, somebody, take this horse while I go back for the other. So he got Black Beauty outside to safety, but Ginger's still in the barn that's burning down. A tall, broad man stepped forward and took me, and James darted back into the stable. I set up a shrill whinny as I saw him go. Ginger told me afterward that whinny was the best thing I could have done for her, for had she not heard me outside, she would never have had the courage to come out. Some of these horses are thinking, it is dangerous in here, but maybe it's just as dangerous out there. But now Ginger hears, Black Beauty is outside. There was much confusion in the yard. The horses being got out of their other stables, and the carriages and gigs being pulled out of houses and sheds, lest the flames should spread further. On the other side, the yard windows were thrown up, and people were shouting all sorts of things. But I kept my eye fixed on the stable door, where the smoke poured out thicker than ever, and I could see flashes of red light. Presently, I heard above all the stir and din a loud and clear voice, which I knew was Master's, Squire Gordon speaking now. James Howard! James Howard, are you there? There was no answer, but I heard a crash of something falling in the stable. And the next moment, I gave a loud, joyful neigh, for I saw James coming through the smoke, leading Ginger with him. She was coughing violently, and he was not able to speak. Ginger's in safety, outside the barn now. My brave lad, said Master, laying his hand on his shoulder. Are you hurt? James shook his head, for he could not yet speak. Would you have the courage like him to go into that burning barn? That would be a tough thing to do. He's risking his life in order to save the horse. Aye, said the big man who held me. He is a brave lad, and no mistake. And now, said Master, when you have got your breath, James, we'll get out of this place as quickly as we can. And we were moving toward the entry, when from the marketplace there came a sound of galloping feet and loud rumbling wheels. "'Tis the fire engine, the fire engine!" shouted 2 or 3 voices. At last, the fire truck's here. Stand back, make way! And clattering and thundering over the stones, 2 horses dashed into the yard with a heavy engine behind them. The firemen leaped to the ground. There was no need to ask where the fire was. It was rolling up in a great blaze from the roof now. Sounds very serious. We got out as fast as we could into the broad, quiet marketplace. The stars were shining, and except the noise behind us, all was still. Master led the way to a large hotel on the other side, and as soon as the ostler came, he said, "James, I must now hasten to your mistress," meaning Mrs. Gordon. "I trust the horses entirely to you. Order whatever you think is needed." And with that, he was gone. The master did not run, but I never saw a mortal man walk so fast as he did that night. There was a dreadful sound before we got into our stalls. The shrieks of those poor horses that were left burning to death in the stable. And it's so sad that some of them were not able to ever come out. It's such a good thing that James was calm enough in his voice to actually have Black Beauty and Ginger come out. It was very terrible and made both Ginger and me feel very bad. We, however, were taken in and well done by. The next morning, the master came to see how we were and to speak to James. I did not hear much, for the ostler was rubbing me down, but I could see that James looked very happy. What do you think Squire Gordon is saying to him? Probably very kind things, praising him for knowing what to do with these horses. and I thought the master was proud of him. Our mistress had been so much alarmed in the night that the journey was put off till the afternoon. So James had the morning on hand, and went first to the inn to see about our harness and the carriage, and then to hear more about the fire. When he came back, we heard him tell the ostler about it. At first, no one could guess how the fire had been caused. But at last, a man said he saw Dick Towler, remember him from the beginning of the chapter, go into the stable with, you guessed it, the pipe in his mouth. That was the reason for the fire. And when he came out, he had not one. So he dropped the pipe in a room full of hay. And when he came out, he had not one, and went to the tap for another. Then the under ostler said he had asked Dick to go up the ladder to put down some hay, but told him to lay down his pipe first. Dick denied taking the pipe with him, but no one believed him. I remember our John Manley's rule, never to allow a pipe in the stable, and thought it ought to be the rule everywhere. Think that should be the rule everywhere? I think so. Now, a pipe is like a cigarette or cigar, so it's they're smoking tobacco, and so you might be thinking also it's probably good for nobody to do that ever, right? Now, James said the roof and the floor had all fallen in, and that only the black walls were standing. The two poor horses that could not be got out were buried under the burnt rafters and tiles. So sad, but it is so wonderful that James did a great job with Black Beauty and Ginger to get them out of there. But sad that some of them ended up dying in the fire. I hope that they learned that lesson to never bring a pipe into a barn, especially because of that dry hay that catches on fire so quickly. Okay, so that is the end of the chapter. You have notes to take on it, and this is the last chapter for the week. You have a quiz to take on Friday and a new Roman myth that you'll be able to watch as well. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, boys and girls.